afternoon, everybody. My name's Anne Greenberg. I'm really happy to be with you this afternoon. I have a lot of slides and very little time. So I'm going to go through this quickly. It's going to be a bit of a fire hose. It's going to be a little bit unusual. I'm going to try to leave about 5 minutes for questions at the end. But I believe we're living through the age of co-creation, and that's what I'm passionate about. And I think AI plays a very big part in that. So in my lifetime, we've actually gone from being able to walk inside a computer to computers going inside of our bodies. And conversely, so right now we have the human scale that's swallowing the machine. Conversely, with entertainment, we have been observers from the outside of content, and now we're moving inside of content. And I think that's a very interesting contrast. When I started out on this journey, I was just a teenager, actually, when I envisioned what I called democratic cinema. And I studied architecture and film. Those two things, when you combine them, really you end up with world building and VR. So I was on this track for immersive stories for a very long time. When I was in film school, which, as I said, is still a very long time ago, I tried to grow stories like you would a fractal. And I had nobody to work with in those days, and it was very theoretical in some ways, and I was in my own little bubble, and I basically had to, what I envisioned was that we would bubble everything down to its diegetic core moments. That's what I call the smallest intelligible portion of a story, and then plant them like seeds in chaos math and watch them grow. And I was still working on this central problem in my work today. And when it comes to storytelling, I say, grow stories, don't tell them. So I left the film industry actually when I became a mother in 1991. Because I thought it was a dead industry. And I founded what I call the Studio of the Future for omnidirectional, interactive, and immersive entertainment to do co-creation. And I know that's a mouthful, but like I said, it was a very big vision. And the first product I did was with David Bowie. And this was drawing on some of the work I had done in film school to create an interactive cinema system that would allow the crowd to deeply participate in the creation of content. And in this case, we made the fan an editor, and they were editing in real time from source material and creating their own music video. So we wrapped it up like a music video machine for Jump here. Now, Ion did a lot of different kinds of things. We got pigeonholed in the music space because of Bowie, but like for instance, Head Candy was a project with Brian Eno that was actually a virtual rave that literally shipped with cardboard glasses in 1995. So I have this habit of being very early in the curve. A Gingerbread Man was in some ways generative. It was taking 2-bit graphics and reanimating them in synchronization with music for this incredible performance art band, The Residents. And down in the far right-hand corner there, you see an image from a project we did. We pioneered Enhanced CD, which was multimedia data and Redbook audio on the same disc. And in those days, we actually had to build our own physics engine to do the VR. So that was one we did, which was kind of like the nth degree Enhanced CD. That was for Primus, where you'd navigate this punch bowl in Captain Shiner's tugboat. And each one of those little objects there floating in the sea was a song experience. So we had a fully immersive, interactive world for every song on the disc, and that was very hard to do in 180K worth of space. I founded that company in early '92, and we did the Bowie project. Was launched in '93. Gracenote was a company that grew out of this company, and that was my second company. Gracenote is the largest entertainment data company in the world, handles billions of requests for data a day now, and is embedded in over 1 billion devices. So as I was saying, Gracenote, at Ion, we actually did other things in music. This was a pet project of mine. My best friend had died of breast cancer when I was in film school, and I was her primary caregiver. And when I had my own tech company, I suddenly realized I could probably recreate her using algorithms. And so this is, again, probably 1994, 93, 94. Oh, went too far the wrong way. In this case, what we were doing was a collaborative model of friends and family, taking images and sounds and text and memories of Becky and putting them into an algorithm. And the goal there was to see if it felt like her. I mean, this has relevance for AI today in terms of building personas, and there's quite a lot of work going on in that area. I think it's really fascinating. This is a project we actually never got to ship because I had to get all these music products out for our partner, Bertelsmann. But one of the other things that had, Playbear's not working. Help. There we go. Okay. So one of the things I had done when I shipped this product for Bowie in '93 was there was this new thing called the World Wide Web. And I did the world's first musician-hosted chat to promote that product with Bowie. And there's a very funny story about this, which I think you'll find fascinating and is relevant to what I'm working on today, because this chat actually changed my life. 2 days before the chat happened, I got a panic call from Bowie's manager, and he said, "Where is the Odeon, and why does it only see 2,500 people? David is worried about riots." And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been working on this thing for months. And I was like, look, there is no Odeon. It's an address on the internet. There's a bandwidth constraint. You can only handle 2,500 people at any given time. And, you know, and there was like silence on the other end of the line. And basically I said, why do you think I'm digging up the street in front of your office to pull new cable to make this chat happen? I mean, in those days, we really had to hand roll every single piece. But this moment changed my life because suddenly I had Bertelsmann's largest star, David Bowie, conversing face-to-face with his audience. And I was like, wow, that's the future. It's all about disintermediation. And it was, for me, the 90s really became about miking the fan. So what do you do with all of those voices being mic'd? Essentially, you have a cacophony of voices. And how do you get above the noise? I believe that in the future, the greatest artists are mute. That's somewhat of a controversial statement, but I believe those are the people who are building the platforms and the machines and the AI. So what happens as we merge with the machine? Are words being put into our mouths? As our culture is becoming hyper-personalized, can we see boundaries between ourselves and the machine? This is increasingly difficult. This kind of issue came to surface, especially when Facebook got into some trouble for edge casting, where they were, instead of showing you a straight algorithm across everybody's feeds, they were manipulating the feed for certain people to show them negative kinds of messaging and for other people positive messaging, and everybody said, oh my God, you're really messing with people's heads. Now, the problem there is that, the idea that data can be neutral is, I think, a fallacy to begin with, and I think that's something people really need to grapple with, and very important for AI. So in my dystopian future, are we all just meat puppets? I think so, actually. In a world where our labor is fused with that of the machine, who's pulling the strings of these puppets? Who controls the machine? I think this is incredibly prescient. A quote from our president, from 2 centuries ago, talking about, I'm a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be dependent on to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts. Well, yellow journalism has been around for a very long time. I'm not somebody who believes that you can put forward facts. I believe that data always has a point of view, and I don't believe data is cold. So unlike a lot of my friends who are on the bandwagon about fake news, it doesn't matter what side you're on, the idea that any news is not fake, I think is a very dangerous one, and I'm out to demystify that. So, truth? You tell me which one is the truth here, right? So even though in entertainment we understand the means of production, as I said, data is not cold and it has a point of view. And still that fact that meaning is constructed is lost upon most people, especially for visual storytelling. So my question is, even in demystifying it and knowing that meaning is constructed, is that enough to preserve our humanity? So I say truth may be a very worthy pursuit, but it's not very high scoring, right? So like Scrabble tiles, you can rearrange the letters and come up with different meanings. And so the contextualization of the bits and pieces that make up meaning is incredibly important. It can be tracked, it can be cryptographically secured and measured, but it can also be seen from all different points of view. I thought this was an incredible project that got underrated, actually, and got trashed by some very famous reviewers. But I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And this was Beck putting out his new album as a sheet music only album, and then allowed the crowd to record it. So I call that basically, the sort of taking pop music to the nth degree, although he wouldn't like to be called pop music. So again, we come back to these blended themes of humans and machines, and for us specifically here doing entertainment AI, what does it mean to be or not to be cyborg? Mark Andreessen said, either in the future you tell a computer what to do, or it tells you what to do, and I think that's absolutely true. Interestingly enough, there was a neurologist who wrote a book called the Goddess versus Literacy. And he believed in bicameral minds, and he was the first male speaker we had at a Women in Tech group that I helped found in the 90s. And he was talking about the hand of the sword, the hand of the pen, and the overdevelopment of the left side of the brain, and looking at the differences between men and women. And gay men having more connections like women do, and lesbian women having more of the left side dominance. Now, these were neurological studies, and my question to him then in the mid-90s was, what does it mean now that every word that we're creating is made by both hands? Because we know that interacting with technology changes brain structure. So what does it mean? And he said, I don't know, but it's a really good question, right? And now we're getting there. We have whole generations that are raised not learning to write letters or cursive, but actually learning to keyboard as their first interface. And in fact, soon we'll not be typing at all, right? So we'll just use our voice, and increasingly so in immersion and using AI systems. And that's going to be very interesting, where we see this sort of left side dominance of the brain settling out. So the way I think about it is that we have these precious hands, our thumbs, which have defined our evolution and our humanity. Can we still hold pencils in the future? And will that hand of the sword and the hand of the pen be interchangeable or disappeared? We fight cyber war with both hands on a keyboard, and soon we'll do the same, just with thought. So how do we preserve our humanity while we do this? How do we keep human scale alongside machine scalability? And can we tell the difference between our voice and that of the machine? And is the notion of the individual lost forever, or was that just an illusion? Which is basically what I believe. So I do believe that the audience is the artist, and that AI systems will increasingly allow us to collaborate in deeper, more meaningful ways. But I'm not afraid of technology, but we certainly collaboratively need to come together and really talk about us against the machine. It's true. So this is what I'm doing now. It's still stealth, so I can't really talk about it, but I will say this. This is a company that's basically going right down between human creativity and machine creativity. And what I'm trying to do is allow users to participate deeply in the co-creation of content and the authorship of that content, so that they can see the relationship between the message and how it is proliferated. And that's what I'm doing. So thank you very much. Do we have some questions? Any questions? No questions. Greg.
So the question is, there's a number of software that screenwriters and writers use to put together their product and ship them. I can't remember the name of the main one.
Main one's Final Draft.
Final Draft, okay. Compared to tools like Final Draft, the evolution of what you're doing sort of builds on that kind of pipeline that people are using to try to extricate this creative material out and put it on paper. How do you think that your ideas will benefit them and help them to add these extra dimensions to what they're doing?
So I think, and we got into this a little bit over the lunch and we were discussing it, one of the things I want to really make sure is that when we take the language of cinema forward into the 21st century, now this is a language that's been developed since recorded media, so the last 100 years, and these formats have been very formulaic and developed over time for specific purposes, but they're not the only way to look at the world, and in fact they're very confining. So what I would say is that you'll see the people who are trying to, 10 years ago do transmedia productions, or now trying to articulate what you do for VR, MR, and AR. The linear format just doesn't suffice. And so what we're doing at Sceneplay, and I'm not going to get into it too deeply here, but suffice it to say we're building a smart script format which will virtualize production and allow those more complex data structures to be reflected in a story and allow you to have different formats for storytelling that are not tied to dominant genre Hollywood storytelling.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Last question.
Is there a copyright implication to this kind of adaptive creativity that you're describing?
Sure, there is, and that's why AI is so important, and not just AI, but technical systems like blockchain, which can, because what happens is if you really are tracking everything in a system, now at Gracenote, my software would track what you played down to 1/56 of a second, right? And so, and there was no field of data there, or a set of fields of data there that weren't collaboratively built, right? But now, when we move forward into the spatial web and the transactional web, we can track all of that. Now, whether we should or not is another question. But if we have a cryptographic rights management hierarchy, we can actually track not only the original story, but all derivatives of it and uses of it. So what we're doing, I'll say this for my last beat, is that with Sceneplay for the smart script, you can have an infinite number of smart scripts with an infinite number of versions of smart scripts, all accessed via API, with an infinite number of products built on top of an infinite number of versions of infinite number of smart scripts. Yeah. So there, yeah. So.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Very nice.